March 21st, 1943. 2 miles off the coast of Bataan, Philippines, the submarine breaches the surface like a steel whale, water streaming from its conning tower. Inside the cramped forward torpedo room, Captain Keiji Tanaka vomits into a bucket for the third time in an hour. He is 24 years old, and he has killed 17 men with his bare hands. But the 9-day submarine journey has reduced him to this, retching bile while a teenage sailor watches with barely concealed disgust. Tanaka wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and tastes copper and shame. This is not how heroes begin their missions. This is not the image he carried in his mind when Colonel Yamashita briefed him 3 weeks ago in that windowless room in Tokyo. The sailor, 18 at most, hands him a canteen. His voice carries the false confidence of youth. "Sir, the raft is ready. Current looks favorable. You should make landfall in approximately 30 minutes. Tanaka drinks, swishes the water around his mouth, spits into the bucket. He looks at this boy who still believes in glory and honor and dying for the emperor, and he feels something he cannot name. Not quite pity, not quite envy, something in between. "What is your name?" Tanaka asks. The sailor straightens, surprised to be addressed. "Takahashi Hiroshi, sir. Seaman second class." Tanaka studies him. Smooth face, unmarked by war or doubt, or the kind of choices that leave scars you cannot see. "When this is over, Takahashi, go home, marry a girl from your village, have children, forget you were ever a soldier." The boy's face shows confusion, then determination. "I will serve the emperor until death, sir." "As will you." Tanaka almost laughs, but the sound dies in his throat. "Yes, until death." 20 minutes later, he is in the raft, Takahashi paddling through swells that threaten to capsize them with each wave. The water is warm when it soaks through Tanaka's clothes, carrying the smell of salt and rotting vegetation, and something else, something that might be death. 3 months ago, the Battle of Bataan ended with 12,000 Americans and 60,000 Filipinos dead or captured. The jungle ahead is full of ghosts. The raft rises on a wave, and Tanaka sees the shoreline, a dark mass against the slightly less dark sky. No lights, no fires, nothing to indicate human presence. This is enemy territory now, held by guerrillas who kill Japanese soldiers and leave their bodies strung from trees as warnings. Takahashi's paddle dips and pulls with mechanical rhythm. His face is set in concentration, eyes fixed on the beach. He does not see the swell building behind them until it is too late. The wave hits like a fist. The raft flips. Tanaka goes under, the waterproof pouch strapped to his chest suddenly heavy as an anchor, dragging him down into darkness that is complete and suffocating. His lungs scream, his hands claw at water that will not hold. This is it, he thinks with strange clarity. This is how it ends, drowned before the mission even begins. Colonel Yamashita will never know what happened. They will assume he was captured, interrogated, broken. His feet touch sand. The realization comes with the force of revelation. He is not in deep water. He is 10 feet from shore, standing in 8 feet of water, drowning because he forgot to swim up. The absurdity of it cuts through his panic. He kicks hard, breaks the surface, gasps air that tastes like life and failure, and a second chance he does not deserve. Takahashi surfaces nearby, still gripping the paddle, his face white with shock. "Sir, are you injured?" Tanaka's laugh comes out as a cough. "No. Swim for shore." They wade through the breaking waves, dragging the deflated raft between them. The beach is narrow, backed by dense jungle that seems to absorb all sound. Tanaka strips off his shirt, wrings it out, checks the waterproof pouch. Everything intact. His papers, the currency, the knife. Carlos Mendoza's entire life, preserved in sealed plastic. Takahashi is breathing hard, his eyes darting toward the jungle. "Sir, I should return to the submarine. We are behind schedule." Tanaka nods. He wants to say something meaningful, some final words that will matter when this boy inevitably dies in this war that Japan is already losing, though no one in Tokyo will admit it yet. Instead, he grips the boy's shoulder once, briefly. Takahashi bows, climbs back into the raft, begins the hard paddle back toward the submarine that is already submerging, leaving only its periscope visible. Tanaka watches until even that disappears, and then he is alone on an enemy beach with a false name and a mission that requires him to become someone else so completely that Keiji Tanaka will cease to exist. He buries the raft in the sand, covers it with driftwood and seaweed. It takes 30 minutes. His hands are shaking, though whether from cold or fear or the adrenaline still coursing through him from nearly drowning, he cannot tell. When he is satisfied that the hiding place will pass casual inspection, he walks into the jungle. The darkness beneath the canopy is absolute. Tanaka moves slowly, feeling his way, every sense straining for sounds of danger. Voices, movement, the click of a rifle being cocked, but there is only the night chorus of insects and the distant scream of something being killed by something else. Nature's war continues regardless of the human one. He walks for 3 hours following a compass bearing that should take him toward the main road between Mariveles and Bagak. His training said to find the road, follow it north, make contact with civilians in the first village, establish his cover identity. Simple steps, a clear plan, yet nothing about stumbling through black jungle feels simple. Dawn comes suddenly, the way it does in the tropics. One moment darkness, the next a gray half-light that reveals his surroundings in stages. The jungle is beautiful in a hostile way. Thick vegetation pressing close on all sides, vines hanging like ropes, the ground soft with rotting leaves. Tanaka stops, listens. Birds now, their calls sharp and clear, the hum of insects rising with the heat. No human sounds. He finds the road as the sun breaks fully above the canopy. It is barely a road, more a muddy track rutted by cartwheels and feet, but it runs north-south as the map promised. Tanaka stands at the edge of the tree line, studying both directions. Empty. He steps onto the road and begins walking north, every step taking him deeper into enemy territory, every step erasing a piece of who he was. Carlos Mendoza would not skulk. Carlos Mendoza would walk openly, a trader moving between towns, nothing to hide. Tanaka adjusts his posture, lets his shoulders slump slightly, adopts the loose gait of a civilian who has never marched in formation. The transformation is physical and mental. He is not a Japanese officer anymore. He is Carlos Mendoza, age 29, born in Davao City, educated until the war came, now just trying to survive by moving goods that people need. He practices the backstory as he walks. His father was Spanish mestizo, a merchant who dealt in hemp and copra. His mother was Filipina from a good family in the city. He has 2 sisters, both married, both still in Mindanao as far as he knows. He himself never married, too focused on building his father's business. And then the war came and nothing mattered except survival. The Japanese invasion scattered everything. He fled north, carried what goods he could, learned to trade in the new economy that war always creates. He is neutral. He works with whoever has money. He asks no questions. The story is smooth in his mind, each detail connected to the next, rehearsed until it feels true. This is the most dangerous part of deep cover work, the part they drill into you during training. You must believe your own lie so completely that even under torture, even half asleep, even drunk, you never slip. Carlos Mendoza must be real. Keiji Tanaka must be dead. The first test comes 2 hours later when he rounds a bend and sees the checkpoint. 4 Filipino men armed with rifles standing beside a crude bamboo barrier across the road. They spot him immediately. The rifles come up, not quite pointed at him but ready. Tanaka's heart hammers, but his pace does not change. Carlos Mendoza would be cautious but not afraid. Carlos Mendoza has walked through dozens of checkpoints. This is routine. The nearest man, older, weathered face, eyes that have seen violence and are comfortable with it, steps forward. Stop. Who are you? Where are you going? Tanaka stops, spreads his hands to show they are empty. Good morning, friends. My name is Carlos Mendoza. I am traveling to Bagak to trade. I have papers. Let me see them. Tanaka reaches slowly for the waterproof pouch, extracts his papers, hands them over. The man examines them with the careful attention of someone who cannot read well but knows how genuine documents should look. The papers are perfect because they are genuine, forged by experts using real forms stolen from Filipino government offices before the invasion. You came from the south, the man says. It is not a question. Yes, from Mariveles. There is still some trade there, despite the Japanese patrols. The word Japanese causes a visible reaction. The rifles come up slightly. The man's eyes narrow. You work with the Japanese. This is the moment. Tanaka lets weariness show on his face. The weariness of a man who has had this conversation too many times. I work with anyone who has money and does not shoot me. The Japanese control the ports. If you want to trade, you deal with them. It is not politics. It is survival. The men exchange looks. Tanaka can see the calculation in their eyes. Is this man a collaborator, a spy, just another Filipino trying to live through the occupation? The seconds stretch. His hand is inches from the knife in his belt, hidden beneath his shirt. He could kill 2 of them before the others reacted, maybe 3, but not all 4, and killing them would destroy his mission before it truly begins. The older man hands back the papers. His face remains hard, but the rifles lower slightly. There is no trade in Bagak. The Japanese burned half the town last month looking for guerrillas. You should turn around. Tanaka tucks the papers away, nods slowly. I heard there were families who needed medicine. I have some. Quinine, sulfa powder. I can trade for food. The mention of medicine changes everything. The hardness in the man's face cracks slightly. You have quinine. Some. Not much. The Japanese keep most of it for themselves. Another look between the men. The older one makes a decision. I am Luis Batista. My daughter has fever, 3 days now. If you have quinine, I can pay in rice. Tanaka reaches into the pouch, extracts a small cloth packet. Inside, 8 white pills, more valuable than gold in a country where malaria kills thousands. He hands 4 pills to Batista. For your daughter. 2 now, 2 tomorrow. She should recover in 3 days. Batista stares at the pills in his palm like they are a miracle. How much? Nothing. I remember what it is like to have family sick and no medicine. Keep your rice. This is calculated generosity, the kind that builds trust, but Tanaka is surprised to find that part of him means it. He has seen enough children die in China. If 4 pills can save 1 child, even an enemy child, then perhaps the scale balances slightly. Batista's eyes are wet. He grips Tanaka's hand hard. You are a good man, Carlos Mendoza. Thank you, thank you. The barrier is pulled aside. The rifles are lowered completely. Batista walks with Tanaka for a few hundred meters, talking now, the suspicion gone. He explains that the guerrillas control this area at night, the Japanese during the day, and everyone in between just tries not to get killed by either side. He talks about the town, about the people who might need medicine or other goods, about the American officer who sometimes comes through, the one they call Captain Jim. Tanaka's pulse quickens, but his face shows only polite interest. Captain Jim, American, Engineer Corps. He helps us build defenses, organize supply runs. Good man. He speaks some Tagalog, respects our ways. Not like some of the Americans who think they know everything. I would like to meet him, Tanaka says casually. If he needs goods, I can find them. Batista looks at him sideways. You would trade with Americans too. I told you. I trade with anyone who does not shoot me. Batista laughs, a sound that carries genuine warmth. You're a wise man, Carlos. Survival first, politics never. I will tell Captain Jim about you when I see him next. Maybe he can use a trader who moves between both sides. Tanaka nods, letting the conversation drift to other topics. But inside his mind is racing. 8 hours in country, and he already has a potential contact point to Corrigan. The mission timeline said it might take weeks to even locate the American. Yet here, in the first real conversation with a local, the path forward is opening. They part ways at a fork in the road. Batista returns to his checkpoint with 4 pills that might save his daughter's life. Tanaka continues north toward a town that may or may not still exist, carrying a name that is not his own, and a mission that suddenly feels more real than any training exercise ever could. He walks for 3 more hours before the exhaustion hits. 9 days on a submarine, near drowning, the tension of the checkpoint encounter, all of it crashes over him at once. He finds a place off the road hidden in thick undergrowth and collapses. Sleep takes him in seconds. He dreams of Takahashi Hiroshi, the young sailor, but in the dream, the boy is not paddling back to the submarine. He is drowning, sinking into black water, his hand reaching up toward light that is too far away. Tanaka tries to swim down to him, but his limbs will not move. He can only watch as Takahashi disappears into darkness, and the last thing the boy says, bubbles rising from his mouth, is "Remember me when you die." Tanaka wakes with a start, his hand on his knife, every muscle tensed. The sun is low. He has slept for hours. Stupid. Dangerous. He could have been discovered, captured, killed. He drinks from his canteen, eats a rice ball that is already starting to spoil in the heat, and continues walking. By the time he reaches the outskirts of Bagak, night is falling again. The town is smaller than he expected, maybe 200 buildings, half of them showing fire damage. The Japanese burned it, Batista said, looking for guerrillas. This is what occupation looks like. This is what his emperor's armies do to people who resist. Tanaka finds a small store still open, selling vegetables and dried fish. The owner is an old woman with eyes that miss nothing. She looks at him with the flat suspicion that comes from seeing too many strangers bring trouble. "I am looking for a place to sleep," Tanaka says. "Just one night. I can pay." The woman names a price that is triple what a room should cost. Tanaka haggles briefly, more for appearance than actual concern about money, and they settle on a number. She leads him to a back room that contains a sleeping mat, a mosquito net, and nothing else. "There is a curfew," the woman says. "Japanese patrol at midnight. If they find you outside, they will shoot you. Understand?" "I understand." She leaves him alone. Tanaka lies on the mat, listening to the sounds of the town settling into darkness. Voices, dogs barking. Somewhere far away, the rumble of a truck engine. Japanese soldiers moving through their conquered territory, secure in their power, never imagining that one of their own officers is sleeping in a back room 3 blocks away, preparing to betray every guerrilla fighter he can find. But as Tanaka lies in the darkness, Batista's daughter keeps floating into his mind. A girl he has never seen, sick with fever, whose life now depends on 4 white pills given by a man whose real name is a secret that could get them both killed. He thinks about Takahashi, who is probably back on the submarine now, heading toward some other mission, some other war. He thinks about his own family in Tokyo, his mother and father, who believe their son is serving the emperor with honor. They do not know that Keiji Tanaka died when he walked off that beach. They do not know that he gave away medicine meant for emergencies to save an enemy child. They do not know that their son, trained to kill without hesitation, is lying awake at night, thinking about a guerrilla fighter's daughter instead of planning his next move toward assassination. This is only day 1. He has 840 days ahead of him. And already, without realizing it, without any conscious decision, Keiji Tanaka is beginning the slow transformation that will end with him holding a knife to James Corrigan's throat and being unable to make the cut. But that moment is still 2 years away. Tonight, he is simply exhausted, far from home, sleeping in an enemy town with a borrowed name and a mission that seems clear enough. Find Corrigan, kill Corrigan, exfiltrate. Simple. Nothing will be simple again. Day 7. Carlos Mendoza has been living in Bagak for 6 days, and Keiji Tanaka has been dead for exactly that long. The transformation is not complete, but it is progressing with the mechanical efficiency of a well-executed plan. The routine establishes itself quickly, because routines are what make a man invisible. Every morning at dawn, Carlos wakes in his rented room, washes from a basin of water that is never quite clean, eats rice and dried fish purchased from the old woman who watches him with eyes that still calculate whether he is threat or opportunity. He walks through the town nodding to people who are beginning to recognize him, stopping at the market where he trades small goods, salt and matches and needles, things that are common enough not to draw attention, but valuable enough to establish him as a legitimate trader. The Japanese patrol through town every afternoon at 1400 hours, 4 soldiers in a truck with a mounted machine gun, their faces hard with the particular cruelty that comes from occupying hostile territory where every civilian might be an enemy. Carlos watches them from the market, his posture relaxed, his expression neutral. He does not look away like the locals do, cowering and hoping not to be noticed. He does not stare with hatred like the young men do, telegraphing their resistance. He simply observes with the mild interest of a man who has learned that soldiers, any soldiers, are best acknowledged and then ignored. On day 3, a Japanese sergeant stopped in front of him, rifle pointed casually in his direction. "You." "Papers." Carlos handed them over without hesitation, his hands steady, his breathing calm. The sergeant examined the documents with the thoroughness of a man who has found contraband before and expects to find it again. "Where are you from?" "Davao City," Carlos said in clear Japanese, startling the sergeant into actually looking at his face. "My father did business with Japanese merchants before the war. I learned some of your language." The sergeant's expression shifted from suspicion to something approaching respect. A useful skill in these times. "I find it helps me stay alive." The sergeant handed back the papers. "Smart man, stay out of trouble. I intend to." The patrol moved on. Carlos returned to his trading. But Keiji Tanaka, watching from behind Carlos Mendoza's eyes, noted the location of the Japanese garrison, counted the soldiers, assessed their discipline and equipment, filed the information away in the part of his mind that still belongs to Tokyo and Colonel Yamashita, and a mission that requires him to betray everyone he meets. On day 5, Luis Batista appeared in the market, the guerrilla fighter who let Carlos pass the checkpoint on that first day. His face showed exhaustion, but also something else. Something that might be gratitude or might be the beginning of trust. He approached Carlos directly, ignoring the cautious distance other locals maintain around anyone who might draw Japanese attention. "My daughter lives. The fever broke yesterday. She is weak, but she will recover." Carlos felt something unexpected, a warmth in his chest that had no place in a trained operative's emotional landscape. "I am glad. Children should not suffer for adult wars." Batista gripped his shoulder, the gesture familiar and genuine. "You saved her life. I do not forget debts. If you need anything at all, you come to me." "Understand." "I understand." "Thank you." They spoke for perhaps 10 minutes, Carlos asking careful questions disguised as friendly interest, learning about the town's economy, its social structure, which families have influence, which collaborators are tolerated, and which are quietly disappeared in the night. Batista answered freely, seeing in Carlos Mendoza a sympathetic ear, a fellow survivor who understands that politics are luxuries and staying alive is the only goal that matters. Before he left, Batista leaned close. "There is a man I want you to meet. An American. He comes through every 2 weeks to coordinate with us. Good man. Fair. He might have use for a trader who can move between Japanese and guerrilla territory." "Interested?" Tanaka's pulse quickened, but Carlos's face showed only mild curiosity, always interested in legitimate business. "When does he come?" "Soon. Maybe 1 week, maybe 2. These things are not precise. I will send word when he arrives. I will wait to hear from you." That was day 5. Now it is day 7, and Carlos Mendoza sits in the small restaurant that serves as the town's social center, eating a meal of rice and vegetables and some stringy meat that might be chicken or might be something else. The restaurant owner is a woman named Rosa, 50 years old, gap-toothed and sharp-tongued, who treats everyone with equal parts suspicion and maternal concern. She drops into the chair across from Carlos uninvited. "You are still here. The food is excellent." "Why would I leave?" Rosa snorts. "The food is terrible, and you know it. But you are still here because you are waiting for something. Or someone." Carlos meets her eyes without flinching. "I am waiting for business opportunities. That is what traders do. We wait. We listen. We move when the time is right." Rosa studies him with the intensity of someone who has survived 3 wars and 2 occupations and knows how to read the truth beneath pleasant lies. "You are not like the other collaborators. They have fear in their eyes all the time. Fear of the Japanese, fear of us, fear of what happens when the Americans return. You have no fear. Why? Perhaps I have already lost everything. When you have nothing left to lose, fear becomes irrelevant." It is a good answer, the kind of answer that invites sympathy without revealing anything real. Rosa seems to accept it. She pats his hand once, a gesture almost tender. "Then you fit well here. We are all people with nothing left to lose." She returns to her kitchen. Carlos finishes his meal. Through the window, he can see the street, the ordinary movement of a town under occupation, people going about the necessary business of survival, pretending normalcy while living with constant threat. A child runs past, maybe 8 years old, laughing at something only children find funny. The sound is jarring because it is genuine joy in a place where joy should not exist. Carlos watches the child disappear around a corner and thinks about Batista's daughter, alive because of 4 quinine pills, because a trained operative made a choice that served no tactical purpose and might actually compromise his mission by making him memorable. The thought troubles him more than it should. In China, he watched children die and felt nothing because feeling was a weakness that got soldiers killed. He had built walls in his mind, careful partitions that separated the work from the self, the necessary violence from the man who committed it. Those walls had held for 3 years through interrogations and executions and villages burned because they might be harboring resistance fighters. Now, 7 days into his mission, those walls are developing cracks he does not know how to repair. He gave away the quinine because it served his cover, yes, but also because the idea of a child dying from fever when he could prevent it felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with tactics or training. This is dangerous. This is how operatives fail, by forgetting who they are, by letting the cover identity bleed into the real self until the boundaries dissolve and there is no longer a clear line between pretending and being. Night falls. Curfew approaches. Carlos returns to his room, lights a small candle, sits on the sleeping mat. From his waterproof pouch, he extracts a notebook, the kind any trader might keep for recording transactions. The first 6 pages contain legitimate entries, goods traded, prices negotiated, small profits calculated. Anyone searching the notebook would find nothing suspicious. Page 7 is blank. Carlos opens it, stares at the empty space where he should be writing his first intelligence report. Information to be memorized, then the page burned, the intelligence carried in his mind until exfiltration, when he will deliver everything to Colonel Yamashita. Garrison strength, patrol patterns, guerrilla contact points, the name Luis Batista, and his checkpoint location, the American's likely arrival within 2 weeks. He should write it all down, fix it in memory through repetition, then destroy the evidence. This is basic tradecraft. This is what he was trained to do. Instead, he closes the notebook and returns it to the pouch. He tells himself it is too early, that he needs more information before committing anything to paper, even temporarily. But the truth he cannot quite face yet, is that writing down Batista's name feels like a betrayal worse than simple espionage. Batista trusted him, saved his daughter, offered friendship. Writing his name in an intelligence report feels like murder. The candle burns low. Carlos extinguishes it, lies down on the mat, closes his eyes. Sleep does not come easily. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he sees Takahashi Hiroshi, the young sailor, drowning in his recurring dream. But tonight, the dream changes. Tonight, when Tanaka tries to reach for the drowning boy, his hand is Carlos Mendoza's hand, and he cannot remember which identity is real anymore. Day 14. 2 weeks in Bagak, and Carlos Mendoza has become part of the town's fabric in the way that useful outsiders sometimes do. He sits in the market most mornings, his goods spread on a cloth, selling needles and thread and small bottles of cooking oil obtained from sources he does not explain. The locals buy from him because his prices are fair, and because he does not ask uncomfortable questions about where their money comes from or what they plan to do with the goods. The Japanese soldiers recognize him now. 3 times they have checked his papers. Each time Carlos has responded with the calm competence of someone who has nothing to hide and finds paperwork mildly tedious but necessary. The sergeant who speaks to him now does so with something approaching collegiality, 2 professionals acknowledging each other across the divide of occupation and resistance. "Your Japanese is very good. Where did you study?" "My father's business partner was from Osaka. He taught me as a boy. He said learning languages was how a merchant became wealthy. A wise man. Too bad the war ruined such partnerships." Yes, too bad. They speak for perhaps 5 minutes. Carlos answering questions with the easy confidence of someone whose story is absolutely true because he has lived it for 2 weeks and can no longer remember which parts are fiction. When the sergeant leaves, Rosa, watching from her restaurant, gives Carlos a look that contains both approval and warning. He is making himself useful to the Japanese, which provides protection, but usefulness to occupiers always comes with a price that must eventually be paid. That afternoon, Batista appears in the market. His face is tight with controlled excitement. "He comes tonight. Captain Jim, my contact says he will be at the old church at 2100 hours. I told him about you. He wants to meet." Carlos nods slowly, his heart rate increasing despite his training. What did you tell him? That you are a trader who moves between territories, that you saved my daughter's life, that you might be useful for obtaining supplies that are difficult to acquire through normal channels. I did not mention that you speak Japanese. That seems like information he should discover himself. You are a wise man, Luis. I am a father who wants his daughter to see her next birthday. Wisdom is just another word for fear disguised as caution. They part. Carlos continues trading for another 2 hours, maintaining the routine, giving no indication that anything significant is about to happen. But inside, Keiji Tanaka is running calculations, meeting location, time, security considerations, exit routes. The mechanics of assassination flood back with the muscle memory of intensive training. 2,100 hours in an old church means darkness, limited visibility, probably only a few guerrillas for security. If Corrigan trusts Batista and Batista vouches for Carlos, then proximity becomes possible. Proximity means opportunity. The knife is in his pouch, 6 inches of steel sharp enough to cut silk, balanced for throwing or close work. He has practiced the killing stroke 800 times, 3 seconds from contact to death. A quick grab, the blade angled upward beneath the ribcage, a twist to ensure the heart is destroyed. The human body is remarkably fragile when you know exactly where to apply force. But as Carlos packs up his trading goods and walks back to his room, a different thought intrudes. What if Corrigan is likable? What if meeting him face-to-face makes him human instead of a target designation in a file folder? What if killing him feels wrong, the way letting Batista's daughter die would have felt wrong? He pushes the thought away angrily. Sentiment is weakness. Corrigan is not a person. He is a mission objective. His death will save Japanese soldiers, will disrupt the guerrilla network, will contribute to imperial victory. Personal feelings are irrelevant. The mission is everything. 2,000 hours. Full darkness. Carlos leaves his room, moving through the town with the casual pace of someone going for an evening walk before curfew. The old church is at the northern edge of town, half destroyed by shelling during the invasion. Its roof collapsed, its walls pocked with bullet holes. It has not held services in 18 months, but it still carries the weight of sacred space. The kind of place people avoid unless they have specific reason to be there. 2 men stand in the shadows near the entrance. Carlos recognizes one as belonging to Batista's checkpoint crew. They do not stop him, but their hands rest on rifles and their eyes track his movement with the flat alertness of men who have killed before and will do so again without hesitation if necessary. Inside, the church is lit by 3 small candles placed on what remains of the altar. The light is weak, casting more shadow than illumination, turning the space into a collection of dark shapes and uncertain forms. 5 people wait in the ruined nave. Batista, 3 other Filipinos Carlos does not recognize, and 1 American. Captain James Corrigan is 34 years old, medium height, solid build, wearing a mixture of U.S. Army uniform pieces and civilian clothes that mark him as someone living outside normal military structure. His face shows the kind of weathering that comes from months in the jungle, but his eyes are alert, intelligent, constantly assessing. He stands with the balanced posture of someone ready to move quickly, if necessary. A pistol rides his hip in a worn holster. Batista makes the introductions. Captain Jim, this is Carlos Mendoza, the trader I told you about. Carlos, Captain Corrigan, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They shake hands. Corrigan's grip is firm but not aggressive, the handshake of someone secure enough not to prove anything through physical dominance. His eyes meet Carlos's directly, searching for something, reading micro-expressions the way good intelligence officers learn to do. Luis says you saved his daughter's life. Corrigan's English carries a slight southern accent. Georgia or Alabama, maybe. That's a hell of a way to make friends. I had medicine she needed. It seemed wrong not to help. Most people in your position would have sold it for triple the normal price, or saved it for their own family. Why didn't you? Because I have no family left to save. The war took them, so now I save whoever I can when I can. It is not heroism. It is just trying to balance the scale. Corrigan studies him for a long moment. Then he smiles, a genuine expression that transforms his face from hard to almost gentle. I understand that impulse. Trying to balance scales that will never balance. It's what keeps us human when everything around us says humanity is a luxury we can't afford. They talk for 40 minutes. Corrigan asks careful questions about Carlos's background, his trading routes, his contacts, probing for inconsistencies or red flags. Carlos answers with the smooth confidence of a man whose story is true because he has lived it for 2 weeks and every detail is embedded in memory. Corrigan's body language gradually shifts from cautious to accepting, the subtle relaxation that comes when suspicion gives way to preliminary trust. The conversation turns to business. Corrigan needs supplies that cannot be obtained through normal guerrilla channels, medical supplies especially, sulfa drugs, morphine, surgical instruments. The Japanese control the ports and confiscate most medical shipments, making them nearly impossible to acquire without connections or willingness to deal with the occupation forces. I can get some of these things, Carlos says carefully, but it will not be easy or cheap. The Japanese watch medical supplies closely. They know guerrillas need them. Every transaction leaves traces. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking if it's possible. Most things are possible. The question is always the price. Corrigan names figures. They negotiate. Carlos asks for amounts that are high but not exploitative, establishing himself as a businessman, not a war profiteer. They reach agreement on a trial transaction. 2 kilograms of sulfa powder, 20 morphine syrettes, basic surgical tools. Delivery in 3 weeks. Payment half in advance, half on delivery. Batista will handle the details of future meetings, Corrigan says. We don't maintain fixed schedules or locations. Too risky, but I'll be back in Bagak in approximately 1 month. If this first transaction works out, we can discuss longer-term arrangements. He extends his hand again. Carlos takes it. Thank you for doing this. Men are going to live because of the supplies you provide. That matters. They shake. Corrigan's hand is warm, calloused, the hand of someone who works physically, not just intellectually. The handshake lasts perhaps 3 seconds. 3 seconds. The same amount of time it would take to drive a knife upward beneath the ribcage and destroy a human heart. Carlos realizes with sudden clarity that he could do it now. Corrigan trusts him enough to stand within striking distance. The guerrillas are watching the door, not their American captain. The lighting is poor. By the time they reacted, Corrigan would be dead, and Carlos would have perhaps 5 seconds to reach the exit before the shooting started. 5 seconds might be enough if he moved immediately after the kill, using surprise and the chaos of Corrigan's falling body as cover. His hand is inches from his belt, from the knife hidden there. 3 seconds. 800 practice repetitions, muscle memory that requires no conscious thought. He could end the mission right now, 21 days after insertion, a spectacular success that would make him a legend in Kempe Tai circles. He does not move. His hand stays at his side. The moment passes. Corrigan releases the handshake, steps back, begins speaking with Batista about patrol routes and Japanese troop movements. The opportunity closes like a door swinging shut. Carlos stands motionless, his mind struggling to understand why his body did not execute a task it has been trained to perform automatically. It was not fear. He has faced death enough times to know the difference between fear and tactical assessment. It was not conscience. He has killed men who begged for their lives and felt nothing but the satisfaction of mission completion. It was something else. Something that has no name in the cold vocabulary of military intelligence operations. It was the realization that Corrigan is not a target designation. He is a man who understands trying to balance unbalanceable scales. He is someone who sees Carlos Mendoza as a person worth trusting. He is human in a way that makes killing him feel less like completing a mission and more like destroying something valuable that cannot be replaced. The meeting ends. Carlos leaves the church, walks back through the dark town, returns to his room. He sits on the sleeping mat, staring at his hands in the darkness. These hands have killed 17 men. These hands should have killed an 18th tonight. These hands refused. Keiji Tanaka tells himself it was tactical wisdom. Moving too quickly without establishing deeper infiltration would have wasted the opportunity to gather more intelligence. Killing Corrigan after only 1 meeting would have destroyed Carlos Mendoza's usefulness as an ongoing asset. The patient approach is better. Build trust. Learn the complete guerrilla network structure. Then execute the mission when maximum damage can be inflicted. These are good rationalizations. They sound professional. They make sense according to the logic of intelligence operations. But Carlos Mendoza, lying awake in the darkness, knows they are lies. He did not kill Corrigan tonight because in that 3-second handshake, something fundamental shifted. Corrigan became real, and real people, Carlos is discovering, are much harder to kill than target designations in file folders. He has been in country for 21 days. He has 820 days ahead of him. And already, without realizing when or how it happened, Keiji Tanaka is losing the war against Carlos Mendoza's slowly developing conscience. The knife remains in his pouch, unused. Outside, the night sounds of occupied Bataan continue their endless rhythm. Dogs bark. Someone coughs. In the distance, the rumble of Japanese trucks on patrol. The war continues around him, indifferent to one man's crisis of purpose. Carlos closes his eyes but does not sleep. In his mind, he feels Corrigan's handshake again, warm and human and trusting. And he knows with terrible certainty that the next time they meet, killing him will be even harder. Day 43. Carlos Mendoza delivers the medical supplies exactly as promised and watches Captain James Corrigan save a man's life with them. The wounded guerrilla is maybe 20 years old. His name is Miguel, and he has taken a Japanese rifle round through his left thigh that has shattered the bone and torn through the femoral artery. He has been bleeding for 6 hours, carried through the jungle on an improvised stretcher by 3 men who refuse to leave him behind, even though his survival chances are approaching 0 with every minute that passes. By the time they reach the hidden aid station in the hills above Bagak, Miguel's face is the color of old paper, and his pulse is barely detectable. Corrigan works with the focused intensity of a surgeon, though his training is engineering, not medicine. He has learned battlefield medicine the way everyone in guerrilla warfare learns it, through necessity and failure, and watching men die because no one knew how to save them. His hands are steady as he cuts away the ruined flesh, locates the severed artery, clamps it with a hemostat from the surgical kit Carlos provided 3 days ago. The sulfa powder goes directly into the wound, white crystals mixing with blood that is too dark, too slow. A morphine syringe into Miguel's arm to stop the screaming that has faded to whimpering that is somehow worse. Carlos stands in the corner of the bamboo hut that serves as operating theater, watching without expression, his role here supposedly just the supplier observing his goods being used. But Keiji Tanaka, watching from behind Carlos Mendoza's eyes, is making calculations that have nothing to do with commerce. The aid station's location, coordinates he can estimate within 500 meters. The number of guerrillas present, 17, including sentries. The cache of weapons visible through the open door of an adjacent hut, mostly old American rifles and Japanese weapons captured in ambushes. The radio equipment, carefully hidden but detectable by the distinctive smell of battery acid and the length of antenna wire strung through the trees. This is intelligence gold. This single location represents a major node in the guerrilla network. One airstrike, precisely coordinated, could eliminate 17 fighters, destroy their medical capability, capture or destroy their radio, and severe communications across 3 provinces. The strategic value is immense. This is exactly the kind of target Colonel Yamashita wanted him to identify. Miguel stops whimpering. For a terrible moment, Carlos thinks he has died, but then Corrigan sits back, blood covering his hands to the elbows, exhaustion written across his face. He'll live. The artery is clamped. The bone is stabilized. He needs real surgery in a real hospital, but he'll live long enough to get it. The other guerrillas exhale collectively, the tension breaking. One of them, an older man with sergeant stripes on his tattered uniform, grips Corrigan's shoulder. "You did it, Captain Jim. You brought him back. The sulfa powder brought him back." Corrigan looks at Carlos, his eyes red-rimmed with fatigue. "Without those supplies, Miguel bleeds out 2 hours ago. You saved his life, Carlos. Not me. You. I only provided materials. You provided the skill. Materials matter. In this war, sometimes materials matter more than courage or skill or determination. Men are dying from infections that could be prevented with 20 cents worth of sulfa powder. Your willingness to obtain these supplies to risk dealing with the Japanese to get them, that saves lives. Don't diminish it." Carlos nods. accepting the praise that feels like acid in his throat because Corrigan does not know that the man who provided the sulfa powder is the same man who memorized the coordinates of this aid station and will report them to officers who will order its destruction. They walk back to Bagak together, just the two of them, Corrigan having sent the others ahead to maintain operational security. The jungle trail is narrow, forcing them to move single file, Corrigan leading with the comfortable confidence of someone who has walked these paths hundreds of times. He carries a Thompson submachine gun slung over his shoulder, the weapon worn but well-maintained, loaded magazine visible. He is not careless. He does not turn his back completely. But his body language shows trust, the kind of trust that comes from multiple successful transactions and no red flags. They could be friends, walking through the jungle, two men on the same side of a war. The illusion is so complete that Carlos almost forgets it is an illusion, almost forgets that friendship is a tool, trust is a weapon, and every step deeper into this guerrilla network is a step closer to betrayal. Corrigan stops at a stream, kneels to wash Miguel's blood from his hands. The water runs red, then pink, then clear. He splashes his face, sits back on his heels, looks up at Carlos. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just business. I've seen you with the locals. You give away as much as you sell. You treat people with respect even when they can't pay. You took time to teach Rosa's grandson how to read. That's not a trader maximizing profit. That's someone who gives a damn. So why? What are you trying to atone for?" The question lands like a physical blow. Carlos feels something crack inside him, some carefully maintained wall between identities, between the mission and the man. He sits down on a fallen log, buying time to construct an answer that will satisfy Corrigan without revealing anything true. But what comes out is not the rehearsed backstory. What comes out is something deeper, something that might actually be honest. "I told you my family is gone. That is true. But I did not tell you how they died. My father collaborated with the Japanese when they invaded Mindanao. He thought cooperation would protect us, would allow business to continue, would keep everyone safe. Instead, it made us targets. The guerrillas came one night. They burned our house. They killed my father and my mother and my two sisters. They would have killed me too, but I was not home. I was in Manila buying inventory. When I returned, there was nothing left but ashes and bodies." Corrigan's face shows immediate sympathy. "Jesus. Carlos, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed." Carlos continues, the words flowing now with momentum he cannot stop. "The guerrillas who killed my family, they were not wrong. My father was a collaborator. He did help the Japanese. He provided them with intelligence about local resistance. He thought he was being pragmatic, but pragmatism in wartime is just another word for choosing a side. He chose the wrong side, and my family paid the price. So now I try to help everyone. Japanese, Americans, Filipinos. I do not choose sides because choosing sides is what got my family killed. I just try to reduce suffering wherever I find it. It does not bring them back. It does not balance anything. But it is all I can do. The story is fiction, constructed in real time from fragments of cover identity and genuine emotion, but it feels true in a way that frightens him. Carlos Mendoza's fictional family killed by guerrillas because of collaboration. Keiji Tanaka's real family in Tokyo who will be shamed or worse if his mission fails. The lines are blurring. The identities are bleeding into each other. Corrigan is quiet for a long moment. Then he speaks, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understands complicated grief. "I lost people too. My whole unit at Bataan. 347 men. We were engineers, not combat troops, but when the Japanese broke through, we fought anyway, because what else could we do? I watched most of them die, some from bullets, most from disease and starvation during the death march afterward. I escaped during the march, hid in the jungle, eventually linked up with Filipino resistance. Every man I save now, every operation that succeeds, I tell myself it balances the scale for the men I couldn't save. But you're right. The scale never balances. We just keep adding weight to both sides and hoping eventually it means something." They sit in silence, two men with invented pasts and real guilt, bonded by lies that contain fragments of truth. The stream flows past, indifferent to human pain. Somewhere in the canopy above, a bird calls bright and sharp, a sound that belongs to a world where war does not exist. Finally, Corrigan stands, shoulders his Thompson. We should keep moving. Japanese patrol routes shift every few days, and I'd rather not test our luck. They walk. The jungle closes around them, thick and green and humid. Carlos follows Corrigan's footsteps, placing his feet exactly where the American's feet touched, an automatic caution that prevents leaving obvious tracks. His mind is racing, trying to process what just happened, trying to understand why he invented a backstory that makes Carlos Mendoza sympathetic, that creates emotional connection, that makes future betrayal not easier, but infinitely harder. This is not professional. This is not how deep cover operations work. You maintain emotional distance. You never create genuine bonds. You never tell stories that humanize you to the target, because humanization runs both directions. If Corrigan sees Carlos as fully human, then Carlos must see Corrigan as fully human, and human beings are much harder to kill than enemy designations in intelligence files. Day 61. Carlos has been in country for 2 months, and the intelligence he has gathered could fill a comprehensive dossier. Garrison locations, troop strengths, patrol schedules, guerrilla safe houses, supply routes, communication protocols, the names and faces of 47 resistance fighters, including their command structure and operational procedures, radio frequencies, weapons caches, planned ambush sites, everything Colonel Yamashita could want to systematically dismantle the resistance network and secure Japanese control of Bataan province. He has written none of it down. He has transmitted nothing. He tells himself it is operational security, that committing intelligence to any form before exfiltration increases risk of compromise. But Keiji Tanaka knows this is rationalization. The truth is simpler and more damning. He has not reported the intelligence because reporting it means acting on it, and acting on it means people he knows will die. Luis Batista, who trusted him enough to let him pass that first checkpoint, whose daughter is alive because of 4 quinine pills. Rosa, who feeds him terrible food and watches over him with maternal concern. The young guerrillas who treat him with careful respect because Captain Jim vouches for him. Miguel, who survived a shattered femur and will walk again because sulfa powder prevented infection. These are not abstract enemy combatants. These are people with names and faces and families and futures that will end in fire if he does what his mission requires. He sits in his room at night, the knife in his hands, running his thumb along the blade that has stayed sharp through 2 months of disuse. 800 practice repetitions of the killing stroke, 3 seconds from contact to death. He could have killed Corrigan 5 times by now. The aid station, the walk back through the jungle, 2 subsequent meetings in Bagasse, a supply handoff at a checkpoint where Corrigan stood close enough to touch, his guard lowered by familiarity and trust. Each time, Keiji Tanaka told himself to execute the mission. Each time, Carlos Mendoza's hand refused to move. The identities are at war now, fighting for control of shared flesh. And Carlos is winning because Carlos has something Keiji never developed. Carlos has friends. Carlos has people who trust him. Carlos has become part of a community that values him not for his utility, but for his humanity. The Japanese sergeant who checks Carlos's papers now does so with bored routine, the suspicion long gone, replaced by collegial recognition. How is business, Mendoza-san? Adequate. The war makes everything difficult, but we survive. We all survive. That is the only victory that matters in occupied territory. They speak for a few minutes, Carlos gathering intelligence about Japanese troop rotations and supply difficulties, information that could be useful to the guerrillas, information that he carefully does not pass along because passing it along would definitively cross a line from maintaining cover to actual betrayal of his nation. But not passing along intelligence that could save guerrilla lives is also a choice. Neutrality is a fiction. Every decision has weight. Every omission is an action. Carlos is beginning to understand that there is no position outside the war, no place to stand where his choices do not carry consequences that ripple outward into other lives. Day 79. Corrigan brings an American OSS officer to meet Carlos. Major Thomas Wheeler, late 30s, hard eyes that have seen too much, the kind of intelligence professional who can smell deception the way dogs smell fear. He questions Carlos for 90 minutes, probing his background, his motivations, his connections, looking for inconsistencies or tells that indicate hidden agenda. Carlos answers with the smooth confidence of a man whose story is true because he has lived it for 79 days, and every detail is embedded so deeply that fiction and memory have merged. But Wheeler is good, trained by professionals who understand human psychology and interrogation technique. He shifts topics abruptly, asks the same question 3 different ways, watches for micro-expressions that indicate cognitive load or constructed responses. Your father collaborated with the Japanese. That must have been difficult for you, growing up in a family that chose the wrong side. My father chose survival. I do not judge him for it, even though his choice killed him. But you must have anger about that. Resentment. He got your family murdered through his collaboration. That has to leave scars. Anger is a luxury. I cannot afford luxuries. I can only afford to keep moving, keep trading, keep living. Everything else is weight I cannot carry. Wheeler leans back, studying Carlos with the focused intensity of someone trying to solve a complex equation. You're either the most psychologically healthy person I've met in this war, or you're the most damaged and just hiding it very well. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Either way, I obtain the supplies you need. Either way, men live who would otherwise die. My psychological state is irrelevant to the mission. Everything is relevant to the mission. A man's motivations determine his reliability under pressure. I need to know that when things get difficult, when the Japanese start tightening the noose, when the easy money runs out, you won't flip. I need to know what you care about deeply enough that you won't betray it. Carlos meets his eyes directly. I care about not adding more names to the list of people who died because of choices I made or failed to make. That is deep enough. Wheeler holds his gaze for 10 long seconds. Then he nods, apparently satisfied. All right, Corrigan trusts you. Batista trusts you. The locals trust you. I'm willing to extend provisional trust. But understand this, Carlos. If you betray us, if you turn out to be a Japanese agent or a collaborator playing both sides, I will personally hunt you down and kill you. Not arrest you. Not turn you over to Filipino justice. I will put a bullet in your brain myself. Are we clear? Perfectly clear, Major. They shake hands. The meeting ends. Corrigan walks Carlos back toward town, his mood lighter than Carlos has seen it in weeks. Wheeler's approval is huge. He controls supply drops, weapons shipments, coordination with Australian Command. With him on board, we can expand operations significantly. Your role just became much more important. Carlos should feel triumph. He has penetrated deeply enough to meet OSS command structure. He has gained trust at the highest levels of the guerrilla network. He has access to intelligence that could devastate American operations across multiple provinces. This is mission success beyond anything Colonel Yamashita could have reasonably expected. Instead, he feels nauseous because Major Wheeler's threat was not idle, because Corrigan's trust is genuine, because somewhere in the past 79 days, Keiji Tanaka stopped executing a mission and Carlos Mendoza started living a life, and the two identities are now so entangled that he cannot separate them without destroying both. That night, he lies awake, staring at darkness, running through scenarios. He could exfiltrate now, signal for submarine pickup, extract with the intelligence he has gathered, return to Tokyo as a hero, having penetrated American operations more deeply than any agent in the Pacific Theater. Colonel Yamashita would be ecstatic. Promotions, commendations, assignment to even more critical operations. But exfiltration means Corrigan dies, means Batista dies, means Miguel and Rosa and Luis and 47 other people whose names he knows, whose faces he recognizes, whose humanity he cannot deny, all die when Japanese forces act on his intelligence. The aid station coordinates, the safe house locations, the radio frequencies. Everything he knows becomes a weapon aimed at people who trusted him. He could stay undercover indefinitely, continue gathering intelligence but never reporting it, maintain the fiction of being a traitor while actually becoming one. Let Keiji Tanaka die completely. Let Carlos Mendoza be the only identity that remains. It would be desertion, the most shameful fate imaginable for a Japanese officer, but it would keep these people alive. Or he could do something he has not yet allowed himself to fully contemplate. He could switch sides, could tell Corrigan the truth, could offer his intelligence expertise to the Americans, could provide them with information about Japanese operations that would save Allied lives. It would be treason, absolute and unforgivable, but it would be honest in a way that neither completing his mission nor passive desertion could be. 3 options, none of them acceptable, all of them carrying costs he does not want to calculate. Outside his window, Bagok sleeps under occupation, people dreaming whatever dreams survive war, unaware that in one small room a man is wrestling with choices that will determine whether they live or die. The knife lies on the floor beside his sleeping mat, blade catching faint moonlight through the window, still unused, still sharp, still waiting for a decision that Keiji Tanaka cannot make and Carlos Mendoza refuses to make. Day 103. 3.5 months in country, and Carlos Mendoza watches Japanese forces raid a guerrilla safe house based on intelligence he did not provide, but could have prevented if he had warned them. The raid happens at dawn, sudden and brutal. 8 soldiers with automatic weapons surrounding a small house on Bagok's eastern edge. Carlos is in the market when the shooting starts, sharp cracks echoing off buildings, followed by screams and the heavier thump of grenades. Everyone freezes, that universal human response to sudden violence, the moment of paralysis before survival instinct kicks in and people scatter. He runs toward the sound without thinking, some part of him needing to see, needing to know if this is his fault, if somehow his presence caused this despite his careful silence. The house is burning when he arrives, thick black smoke pouring from windows, flames already consuming the bamboo walls. 3 bodies lie in the street, guerrilla fighters caught trying to escape, cut down by machine gun fire. Japanese soldiers are dragging 2 prisoners out, both wounded, both silent with the terrible silence of men who know what interrogation means. Carlos recognizes one of the prisoners, Antonio, a young fighter he met twice at the aid station, maybe 22 years old, who talked about his fiancée in Manila and showed Carlos a photograph of a girl with bright eyes and a future that will now never happen. Antonio's left arm is shattered, bone visible through torn flesh, blood streaming. His face shows shock and pain, and something that might be resignation. The Japanese sergeant, the same one who has checked Carlos's papers dozens of times with collegial boredom, sees him in the growing crowd. Mendoza-san, he calls out, stay back. This is military operation. Carlos nods, steps back, his face showing appropriate civilian concern and fear. But inside, Keiji Tanaka is analyzing the raid with professional assessment. Good tactical execution, complete surprise. Overwhelming force. Prisoners taken alive for interrogation. This is competent work by competent soldiers doing their duty. And Antonio, who will be tortured in a Kemputai interrogation room until he reveals everything he knows or dies refusing to reveal it, is also a competent soldier doing his duty. The war does not care about competence. The war simply grinds everyone into the same bloody dust. The prisoners are thrown into a truck. The bodies are left in the street as warning. The Japanese patrol leaves. The fire burns. Civilians emerge cautiously from hiding, staring at the destruction with the numbed expression of people who have seen this too many times. Rosa appears beside Carlos, her face grim. 3 dead, 2 captured. The Japanese are getting better intelligence somehow. Someone is talking. Or someone is watching more carefully, Carlos says quietly. We all leave traces. The Japanese are patient. They follow patterns. Eventually, patterns reveal everything. Rosa looks at him sideways. You sound like you understand military thinking. I understand survival thinking. It is similar. She grunts, unconvinced, then moves toward the bodies. Someone must prepare them for burial. The Japanese will not do it. They leave the dead as lessons. Carlos helps carry the bodies to Rosa's restaurant, the only building large enough to serve as temporary morgue. The dead weigh more than he expected, or perhaps his arms are weaker than they should be, or perhaps the weight he feels is not physical. He has touched dead men before. He has created dead men, but these dead men he knew. One of them, Carlos realizes with sick certainty, shared a cigarette with him 2 weeks ago and talked about his brother in Mindanao. That night, Corrigan appears in Bagok, his face hard with controlled fury. 3 good men dead. Antonio and Rafael captured. The Japanese knew exactly where to strike and when. Someone is feeding them information, Carlos. Someone in the network is compromised. Or they are just watching carefully, and we are being predictable. No. Corrigan's voice is flat with certainty. This was precise. They hit the one safe house we were using for weapons storage. They came at exactly 0600, 30 minutes before shift change, when the guard would be tired and less alert. That is not observation. That is intelligence from inside the network. The accusation hangs unspoken but clear. Someone is a traitor. Someone is selling information to the Japanese. And Carlos Mendoza, the traitor who moves between both sides, who speaks Japanese, who deals with occupation forces, suddenly becomes a very logical suspect. Carlos meets Corrigan's eyes without flinching. If you think I am the leak, then search me, question me, do whatever you need to do. But understand this, Captain. If I wanted to betray you, I would not do it for one safe house. I would wait until I had everything, every location, every name, every operation, and I would give it all to the Japanese at once for a price that would set me up for life. Betraying you piece by piece makes no tactical sense. It just keeps the war going, and the war is bad for business. The logic is sound because it is true. A real traitor would behave differently, but the irony is acid in Carlos's mouth because he is a real traitor, just one who has not yet completed his betrayal, who has gathered all the intelligence Corrigan fears and done nothing with it except carry it like a stone in his chest. Corrigan studies him for a long moment. Then the hardness fades slightly. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm angry and looking for targets. You've been nothing but solid for 4 months. You've saved lives. I have no reason to suspect you except paranoia and grief. Paranoia keeps you alive in this war. Never apologize for it. They talk for another hour, Carlos providing what comfort he can, which is minimal because what comfort exists for men watching their comrades die. Eventually, Corrigan leaves to coordinate with his remaining fighters, to adjust operational security, to prepare for Japanese follow-up operations that will inevitably come. Carlos returns to his room and sits in darkness, his mind replaying the morning's violence on endless loop. Antonio is being tortured right now. This moment. While Carlos sits safely in a rented room, Antonio is in a basement somewhere screaming answers to questions that will get more of his comrades killed. The Kempe Tai are expert at interrogation. They will extract every piece of intelligence Antonio possesses, names, locations, operational plans. And because Antonio is brave and loyal, he will resist as long as humanly possible, which means the torture will be prolonged and inventive and will break him eventually because everyone breaks. Carlos could prevent it, could walk to Japanese headquarters right now, reveal his identity, order Antonio's release. One Kempetai captain outranks every soldier in Bataan garrison. He could stop the torture with a sentence, could save Antonio's life. But saving Antonio means revealing himself, means ending Carlos Mendoza, means the intelligence he has gathered, intelligence he has refused to report, suddenly becomes active and actionable, means everyone he knows dies anyway, just more efficiently, with official approval instead of enemy action. So he sits in darkness and does nothing while Antonio screams. Another name for the list, another weight on the scale that will never balance, another piece of his soul corroding into something that will never recover even if he survives this war. The knife mocks him from the floor, still unused after 103 days, still sharp, still waiting. But the man who carried it ashore from a submarine 2 months ago no longer exists. That man knew who he was, knew his duty, knew that hesitation was weakness. That man died somewhere between day 1 and day 103. And Carlos Mendoza, the fiction that became real, has no idea how to complete a mission that requires murdering the only people in the world who treat him like he matters. Outside, dogs bark. Someone coughs. The ordinary sounds of night in occupied territory continue their rhythm, indifferent to one man's crisis, indifferent to Antonio's screams in whatever basement holds him, indifferent to the fact that 3.5 months ago a trained killer came ashore to complete a simple mission and instead discovered that nothing in war is ever simple, especially dying, especially killing, especially choosing which side of an unwinnable conflict deserves whatever fragments of loyalty you have left to give.